Srila Prabhupada's response to the first question and the GBC's response to his response. I had already pointed out the importance of this original response, that this issue as to how initiations would be conducted after he departs had not been settled up yet. But let's look at this from another perspective. The GBC had argued that Srila Prabhupada only set up the Ritvik system for while he was present. After he leaves, that system would no longer be authorized, and his disciples could now begin taking their own disciples. However, the question that was asked him was very clear. The GBC, the question that the GBC asked him was in regards to the initiations in the future, particularly when Srila Prabhupada was no longer present with us. In fact, the written question was to only ask about after he had departed. But still, even the way Satsvarup changed it when he asked the question, the emphasis was regarding initiations for after he has departed. When Srila Prabhupada said he would soon select officiating acharyas, Ritvik acharyas, or these officiating Ritvik acharyas, he was responding to after he was no longer present with us. So the GBC's argument that the Ritvik system was only for while he was still present, that doesn't hold up. It is a convenient argument the GBC have concocted, but that argument is not based on Srila Prabhupada's response to their question regarding initiations for after he has departed. I'll explain how they got wrong on this. That will come up. That will come up after we analyze the actual May 28th meeting in the next timelines. But for now, we'll just go on with our analysis for now. So even without applying the 5 keywords, this argument by the GBC, it's found to be invalid, because they asked specifically for initiations after he's departed. And Prabhupada said he was going to select officiating Ritviks, officiating priests, ceremonial priests. So another point regarding the 5 keywords is that Srila Prabhupada was obviously stating this in regard to the Ritvik system and not in regards to regular initiations conducted by regular gurus. Why do I say this? Because the question that was asked was, how are the initiations to be conducted when you're no longer present? Srila Prabhupada, as a regular and actual guru, had been conducting his own initiations for many years. In fact, he initiated his first disciple in India in 1955. Srila Prabhupada knew perfectly well how regular initiations are to be conducted. And yes, as I have said earlier, so did the GBC men. Yet Srila Prabhupada's response to their question is how initiations are to be conducted after he leaves. He's saying, after this is settled up? Well, in other words, he's telling them that he can't answer that yet because he hasn't settled up yet exactly how initiations are to be conducted. He had been conducting initiations for decades. Well, as I pointed out, obviously his divine grace knew perfectly well how regular initiations were conducted. So obviously he is only referring to the officiating Ritvik system of initiations and not to regular initiations by regular gurus. But again, this was the response for initiations after he has departed, which again means that the GBC is wrong when they argue that the Ritvik process was only for before Srila Prabhupada departed. That is a bogus and totally concocted idea, and it is not at all upheld by an analysis of Srila Prabhupada's reply to their question. I'll just go off script a little bit. The really reason why they got off on that is because they misunderstood this meeting. They misunderstood what he said. They missed those 5 keywords. And they went ahead and started to get a settled up answer. And then Srila Prabhupada started talking about giving his order. And those men would become regular gurus. And they got mixed up. They thought he was still talking about the Ritviks. I'll get to that. But at the end of it, they came out with a GBC report and said, Prabhupada said that soon he will select some men and they will be regular gurus. And that's what the GBC thought Srila Prabhupada said in this meeting. And so when the July 9th letter came out, they said, no, Srila Prabhupada already gave his final answer back in May, and he said he's going to select men who will be regular gurus. So he's selecting some men, and he's talking about Ritvik. Well, that can only be while he is present, and then they'll be regular gurus, because they misunderstood what he had said during May 28th. We'll get to that. We'll explain that. But that's where things got off, and where they really got off is because they missed these 5 key words. They missed the 5 key words, that this wasn't settled up yet on May 28th. Another argument the GBC have wanted us, I'm back to my script, another argument the GBC have wanted us to think that Srila Prabhupada hadn't spoke of setting up a Ritvik system before this meeting. Well, and if that were the case, then the GBC would have only been expecting that those who would conduct initiations after Prabhupada departs, they would be regular gurus. And they'd be conducting regular initiations. Then why were they asking Srila Prabhupada such a stupid question? If Srila Prabhupada had not told Tamal just a few days earlier that he was going to set up a Ritvik system, then why were the GBC men asking Srila Prabhupada how a regular initiation by a regular guru would be conducted in the future, particularly when Srila Prabhupada wasn't with us? First of all, even while Srila Prabhupada was present, Srila Prabhupada would be still conducting the initiations. And if the GBC had not heard about a Ritvik system before, then why would they be asking Srila Prabhupada how he was going to be conducting his own initiations in the future? In other words, they weren't asking about the future while he's still present. They were asking specifically about after he was no longer present. How would those initiations be conducted after he departs? But even then, the GBC would have been anticipating, if they hadn't heard about Ritvik, that Srila Prabhupada would be appointing a regular guru who would then be conducting regular initiations. So why, again, were the GBC asking about how a regular initiation was to be conducted? That would have been a foolish question, since they perfectly knew how a regular initiation was conducted. And then why would Srila Prabhupada even have entertained such a foolish question if he had never spoke to them about setting up a Ritvik system before? Obviously, he would have questioned why they were asking such a question. And if he wasn't wanting or planning on setting up such a Ritvik system for after he departs, instead wanted that many of his disciples will become regular gurus after he leaves, then why would he not have given the reply, and given that reply, I should say? Rather, he would have said something like, I shall soon select some men who will act as officiating acharyas while I'm present, and they will then become regular gurus after I depart, and they will conduct regular initiations. Done. Simple. The question fully answered. If that's what Srila Prabhupada was meaning to do, then he would have clearly stated exactly that. He wouldn't have said it. He hadn't settled yet on how those initiations to be conducted. If they're going to be regular gurus, they'll just be conducting regular initiations. That's all. Prabhupada wouldn't have had to tell them, well, after this is settled, because I don't know, it's not settled yet. I don't know how initiations will be conducted in the future after I'm no longer present, because I haven't settled it yet. But if they're regular initiations, it would have been settled. Simple. But they weren't talking. He wasn't talking about regular initiations. He was talking about Ritvik initiations after he departs. That he hadn't settled, how those initiations would be conducted. My point is that it is so obvious that the GBC were asking about the Ritvik system. They were not asking about regular gurus conducting regular initiations. And yet, we take away these 5 key words, and as I've pointed out, Srila Prabhupada, his only response would have been that he would soon select some of the GBC men to act as officiating acharyas, who he agreed were Ritviks, but he didn't answer their question as regarding how they were to conduct those initiations. So if the GBC had no knowledge at all prior to this meeting that Srila Prabhupada said he was going to set up a Ritvik system, well, first of all, their question would have been really dumb, as they would have, they would have been asking who, not how. But secondly, the fact that they even accepted Srila Prabhupada's reply as a valid reply is also very telling. They're asking how initiations will be conducted after he leaves, and Srila Prabhupada says he will soon select some of them to act as officiating Ritvik, acharyas. Well, these these men seem completely satisfied with that answer. And they move right on to their second question. Again, why would they be so satisfied with that Srila Prabhupada is going to select officiating acharyas who he said are Ritvik acharyas? If this GBC had never heard that Srila Prabhupada had previously said anything about setting up a Ritvik system, they wouldn't have known what Prabhupada was talking about. They assumed that they understood. They assumed they understood. When Prabhupada said, I'll soon be setting up a system with selecting some men to act as Ritviks, even though that was a term they had never used before. Prabhupada had never used before. They had never heard of before. That's why Tamal asked if this officiating acharya was the same as Ritvik acharya. But that again is a term that the GBC had never heard before, except from Tamal, who heard it from Prabhupada just days earlier. So, and then Srila Prabhupada replied that a officiating acharya, yes. Ritvik acharya, yes. Ritvik. What is so strange is these men were so satisfied with that response that they just moved right on to their second question. Why is it strange? Because they had asked how those initiations were to be conducted, and Prabhupada's response didn't answer that question at all. Rather, his reply pointed to who, to the title of what they will be called. He would soon recommend some of them to act as these officiating Ritviks. But that just addressed how. It didn't address, that just addressed who. It didn't address how they would conduct the initiation. So even without applying the 5 key words, it is strange that these GBC men accepted this response and moved on, because Srila Prabhupada didn't answer the question at all. But he did address it in these 5 key words. And what he said was, this is just not settled yet. And after it is settled, then he will select some of them to act as these Ritviks. But the only way these men felt satisfied enough with that answer was because they had already heard that the process would be a proxy system, where the Ritviks would perform the ceremonies, yet Srila Prabhupada would remain the initiator guru. They had known this much because that is what Srila Prabhupada told Tamal a few days earlier, when Tamal was asked to go in and ask Srila Prabhupada who Srila Prabhupada was going to select as the next acharya. And Srila Prabhupada explained that Ritvik system. And then Tamal went back and informed the other GBC men what that system was. So they already knew that part. They already knew that it would be a proxy system. They already knew that Srila Prabhupada would remain as the actual guru. And so when they heard officiating acharya and then Tamal ask to confirm, is that the Ritvik acharya you were talking about, and Prabhupada confirms it, then these men understood, oh, that's the system. But he didn't answer the detail as to how it was to be conducted, those systems. That is what he said he would do after it's settled up, and they missed that. But the only reason that they were satisfied by that answer was because they thought, oh, Tamal was right. This is what Prabhupada is going to do. He is going to set up these Ritviks, and he will remain the actual guru. So they kind of understood what the process would be a little bit. They just didn't know exactly how it was to be conducted. That's why Satsvarup was satisfied with the reply and went on to their second question. But they didn't even hear that Srila Prabhupada had told them that this was not settled yet. How those Ritvik initiations would be conducted after he departs, this wasn't settled yet. After this is settled, then he will select some of them to act as officiating Ritvik acharyas. But the details, that wasn't settled yet. The point is, they shouldn't have gone on to their second question, because they were asking, what they were trying to do is get a final settled up details of what that system was, and it wasn't settled yet. That means that whatever Srila Prabhupada said after this point wasn't final. It wasn't settled. He may change aspects of it. With this in mind, we go on to question number 2. Number 4 on their list, but their second question on this topic.